so no on-grid, no hybrid on-off-grid switching. It's just going to be pure off-grid, nothing else. And if you have questions during the presentation, just feel free to ask. You don't have to wait for the end. So let's begin with Huawei. As you know, probably, Huawei has right now 3 brands, 3 families that can work in pure off-grid mode. From single phase, it's the L1 and the LC0, which is the new one. The L1 ranges from 2 to 6 kilowatt on single phase, and also the LC0 ranges from 8 to 10. The LC0 is that one in the middle of the house. It's an 8 kilowatt single phase inverter, and from 3 phase is the new MAP0, which we don't have it displayed, but it's the next generation of the M1. So these 3 types of inverters can work in pure off-grid mode. Of course, you need to install batteries for the MAP0. Just a small side note, if you're using the L1 without batteries, but you have enough PV, let's say you have 5 kilowatt PV and you want to use just one light bulb, which uses just 100 watts, you can still use it without batteries. So, and until the point where the consumption is lower than the PV generation, you can use the L1 and the LC0 without batteries in off-grid mode, just so you know it. The MAP0 is the new asymmetric hybrid 3-phase. It ranges from 5 to 12 kilowatt. It's going to replace the M1. So until we have stock and EU has stock from the M1, we will still have them. But after the stock is gone, there's just going to be MAP0, nothing else for the residential off-grid solutions. The difference between this and the M1 is obviously the asymmetric function, the unbalanced output. It also has higher DC load capacities, higher current on the DC side, so you can use more solar panels with it. It can operate in off-grid mode purely, and also it can do the switching between on-grid and off-grid. But for that, you need the SmartGuard, and we will talk about that later. What's a SmartGuard and how can you use it? And also, from MAP0, we will have 2 generations, the Sun 2000 and the Sun 5000. The differences between the 2 and the 5 is the 2 is the same as we used to, and we are already familiar with it. And the 5000 is a solution where you have to optimize each of the panels on the DC string. So it's like SolarEdge. You have to optimize all of the solar panels on the DC side, and with these, there's some extra functions that can be added to the inverter because of the optimization. So this is the 2 versions that we can offer from the MPPT. From batteries, we also have the new S1 LUNAs, which is displayed over there. It's basically the same solution as the previous versions. The difference is really that the previous version was 5 kilowatt-hour each battery pack. Now the new one is 7 kilowatt-hour each battery pack. You can stack it up with 3 pieces for 1 controller. And also for 1 inverter, you can use 2 towers. So in total, that would be, I think on the next picture, it's going to be here. Yeah. So you can use 42 kilowatt-hour in total for 1 inverter instead of the 30 kilowatt-hour for the previous versions. I think the greatest advantage and the biggest improvement is that all of the DC and communication and earthing and everything connection is inside the house. So basically, you don't have to connect anything between the battery packs. You just have to place the bottom of the batteries and just put them on top of each other, and that's all. You don't need to do any kind of communication and DC connections on the sides. So it really speeds up the installation. If you have, for example, 2 towers from the previous version, I think you needed like 1 hour to install it with all the cables and everything. And with the new ones, it would be like 10 minutes just to put them on top of each other and just connect the BMS with the inverter. So The installation is really much more easier than it used to be. Also, because of these internal connections, the IP rating is much more higher than the previous versions. And this way, because of the IP rating is higher, it can withstand the environment more effectively. The warranty is extended from 10 years to 15 years. So also, you can use it for longer time and with better conditions. Also, it's good to mention that Huawei is one of the few brands that have the heating inside the batteries, so you can easily put and place them outdoors if the client requires, because it has the heating inside. So in case the temperature would drop below a set value, it can heat it up itself in order to prevent the cells of damaging. Just like the previous versions, it has the built-in energy optimizer in each pack, which allows you to charge and discharge each of the packs with their maximum capacity. So if you just install a tower with 2 battery packs and you would like to expand it like 3 years later, obviously the capacity will be different on those 3 years old packs. But if you install a new one with 100% state of health and the rest of the one, let's say they're just 95, you would have a 5% difference between the 2 battery packs. And if they wouldn't have the optimizer inside, that would mean you could only use 95% of the newly installed battery module, but with the optimizer, you can use 100% in each of the battery packs. So that's really a great advantage, and I think Huawei is the only brand that have this optimizer inside the battery cells, so it's really a useful feature. Also, each of the battery packs has a built-in fire suppression kit, so in any case a fire would occur, it could put off the fire inside the battery pack within 15 seconds. Ultra low temperature, just what we mentioned, it has the heating inside, so just like the previous version, it can heat the whole battery pack up in order to maintain working environment in the cold temperatures also. And because of the internal connections, if you install it in the basement, for example, and you have the chance of flooding inside the basement, it can withstand 40 centimeters of water just in case the water would rise, because there's no connections inside, outside of the battery. So that's really a good feature for some places if you install in the basement, for example. So the SmartGuard, it's basically the replacement of the backup box. So the backup box, we had 1 and 3 phase from them, and SmartGuard is the family that will replace the backup boxes. So until we have stock of the backup box, you can still buy them and order them, but once they're gone, Huawei won't produce them anymore, and there will be just the SmartGuard to use. So the difference between the SmartGuard and the backup box is not displayed for some reason, but the main difference is that for the backup box, you could have a 3-second UPS port with 2.5 kilowatt or 3 kilowatt power that you can use even in off-grid mode. But with SmartGuard, the whole wiring is different, because for SmartGuard, you have to install the SmartGuard between the electricity meter and the home junction box, so in between everything and in front of everything. And basically, you have to wire the whole house through the SmartGuard. And when the grid would go as an outage and you wouldn't have electricity, the SmartGuard switches off the whole grid and powers the whole house from the inverter. Of course, you would, in 3-phase, you need the MAP0 to have all of the 3 phases powered by the inverter and also with the batteries. On single phase, you can also use the L1 and the LC0 series, so both of them, because from the SmartGuard you have 1 and 3 phase also, but it's just based on the AC connection, so it's not the phases that you can use in off-grid mode. And the great advantage, and we will see the details of it. So the Pro is basically like a facelift version of this one. It has each of the technical parameters on a bit wider range or lower ranges. For example, the MPPT range starts from 110 volts, which is compared to the previous 200 volts, it's really lower. The startup voltage is 140 volts, so let's say from 5 panels you can start a string. And also from the MPPTs, it has 3 MPPTs with 3 strings compared to the 2 in the previous version. So that's really good for residential solutions because it's not rare that you have 3 different angles of the roof that you have to install panels onto, and with these 3 MPPTs you can easily harvest the energy without using optimizers. Also, you can use 200% oversizing on the PV side without optimizers, so a 10 kilowatt inverter can accept 20 kilowatt of PV panels. It also has a greater IP rating, just what we show on the videos. The connections, they made it a bit different than the previous version, and I think it's a great advantage because now you don't have the load and or the EPS and the grid under the same housing. It's separate now, so it's easier to connect of the cables. And also from the battery side, it has dual battery inputs, so just like the Ultra, you can connect 2 separate batteries or 1 battery with extended power. We will see that later here. Yes, we just talked about this one. Some standards. It's just to show you that on the left side, the EAC standard is what the standard requires to do. And on the right side, you can see the Solax solution that they extended, for example, the AFCI ranges detection from 100 to 200 meters. And also, they reduced the time that needed to compress these ORC fault on the DC side. So it's really a great advantage in the safety features of the inverter. And also, for EPS side and off-grid solutions, there are half-wave loads, you know, like the hair dryer and all those equipments that uses or wastes a lot of energy, and the inverter can support all of these half-wave loads, which are like wasting energy, because for the previous versions and many of the inverters, they cannot work perfectly with these half-wave loads, but the new Pro version of the G4 can easily work with them. And about the battery that I mentioned, since you have 2 battery inputs, you can either connect 2 separate towers or 2 separate string of batteries if you would like to have an extended capacity of batteries. But if you would like to just use more electricity from the same battery, then you can use an epsilon connector with the same battery, and you can double the amps that you can use from the same battery. So this way, you can use 2 times more power from the same battery than with just 1 connection. So it's really a great advantage if you're using, for example, an electric oven and it uses too much electricity for just 1 battery to give it, even though if you have it in the battery. But if you connect it with an epsilon, then you can use double of the electricity. So that means you cannot, or you don't have to buy from the grid because you have it in the battery already. Also with Solax, it's not displayed here, but the HS25 is the rackable or the modular version of the batteries that has the heating. So that's the HS series are the one in Solax that have the heating inside. The other batteries from Solax, they doesn't have the heating, so if you would like to place the batteries outside or you need the heating, it's going to be the HS25 and HS36 and HS51. These are all batteries that you can just stack on each other, on top of each other, and it's the same as Huawei. There's no connection in between the battery packs, just from the BMS to the inverter. But I think it's going to be on the next picture. So all of the HS series are with heating, and it's really good to know because Not many brands have this heating inside the batteries. T58 and T30 is the second most common, I would say. I think you're probably familiar with it. Those are indoor batteries. The T58 is like a master and slave solution, and the T30 is when you rack them on top of each other like one tower. So these are the two different ones with the heating and without the heating. Some application system scenarios is same with the batteries. So basically, with the Pro version, you can connect up to 10 pieces in parallel altogether. They have to have the batteries on each of them if you would like to connect them in parallel for off-grid mode. And you know, until 3 pieces parallel connection, you don't need anything extra device, so you can just connect the grid side and the EPS side. But if you're using more than 3 pieces of inverters, you have to use the EPS parallel box. It's like a pre-assembled AC junction box that you can connect all of the inverters EPS side, and from this EPS parallel box, you can just use one big cable and connect it to the house loads in order to supply them with the electricity. So this is the parallel function, and also we can work with generator. It can work in off-grid or on-grid mode. In this case, it's on-grid, but as you can see, we still can use the EPS loads, the common loads, and we can use the generator's power in case the grid goes into outage. So you just need to install an external ATS that will do the switching between the grid and the generator. But in case if we're just talking about off-grid solutions, then it's going to be this one where you have to connect the generator on the grid side. Just use a CT, and on the EPS side you have all the loads, and this way you can use the generator, and also if your generator has the automatic startup function with the signal, then the inverter can give a signal to the generator when to start and when to stop, when the extra electricity is needed. For example, if you are in the night, there is no PV production and the batteries are drained, then it can start the generator to supply the loads on the EPS side. And also with microgrid function, you can use, in this case, for example, if you have an old Solax inverter, which is on-grid inverter, you can connect it to the EPS side. You just have to install a meter. And in this case, even if the grid goes into an outage or there is no grid at all, we can still use an on-grid inverter with the hybrid Solax, because on the EPS side, we will always have electricity. And if we have electricity, then it means the on-grid inverter can still work in an off-grid mode with this hybrid inverter. So it's really a great advantage. If you have an old system, you don't have to throw it in the trash. You can still use it. You just have to buy a new hybrid inverter with the mandatory accessories, and then you can still use it with extra PV or without extra PV, or just the old system with batteries. That's the HS25. It's a 2.5 kilowatt of each the battery pack. It's the rackable one with the heating. For one battery controller, you can add 13 pieces of batteries, so 13 times 2.5 kilowatt hour is the maximum capacity that you can add up for one tower. And also we have an installation video on how to set the inverter up, how to make it work if you have batteries, if you don't have batteries, if you can feed back electricity to the grid or not. It's really a step-to-step introduction of how to set up using your phone. And if you go to off-grid with Deye, I think that's going to be pretty quick, because we already had the Deye instruction in the morning, and I think Peter spoke about all the off-grid solutions. So basically, yeah, that would be all for Deye, because it's already done. But basically, as you know, all of the hybrid Deyes can work in off-grid mode with high voltage or low voltage batteries, depending on the inverter. There is no need to use an extra device. You just have to connect the batteries, connect the PV, and on the load side, you can have constant electricity supply. So don't hesitate to ask any questions about. Yeah, so the generator port, as far as I know, if you have the latest firmware, it should work. Because we had some issues with previous firmwares that the software was too old, and for some reason it wasn't working perfectly. But if you have the latest, it should work with the generator. Also, it can work with the automatic startup generator or just manual one. If you have the signal on the generator, you can also use the Deye connection to start the generator and stop it. But if the generator doesn't have this kind of function, then when you would need to start the generator, it would just give you an alarm, and you would have to pull the generator yourself in order to use its energy. For recommendations with the generator, Deye has just a few rules that you have to take. First of them, they say, is not to connect a generator with higher output capacity as the inverter. So if you have a 15 kilowatt inverter, they say don't connect a higher than a 15 kilowatt generator. And also one more requirement, if you have a three-phase inverter, they require you to connect a three-phase generator. And if you have just a one-phase inverter, then you connect a one-phase generator. So that's what they are asking. Personally, we haven't tested if the three-phase inverter is working with a single-phase generator. I would say I think it's working, but they do not recommend it to use it. So that's the only two things they require. And beyond that, you can just go far as you would like to go. Yes, that's true. Mihal, could you check if Hugo is still there? Thanks. We have some promotions, I think, still for Huawei, but Hugo is better on the commercial side. I'm more the technical side. But yeah, if you install batteries at some levels and you register it to the Fusion Solar between these and these times, you can claim a free BMS. And also, I think it's the same with M1 inverters, or it used to be the same, that if you buy like a 10 kilowatt M1, you can get 10 pieces of optimizers for free. So they have some kind of these promotions. But if Hugo is still there, he can tell you about more. Hugo, could you tell us some about the Huawei promotions, if they still have the free BMS and the free batteries and free optimizers and these, or it's already over? Okay, then it was quick, so no more promotions. Because I think it was ranging in 2014 or 2024, right? Yeah, so it's his new year for the Chinese also. So.
We have to wait a bit because the Chinese guys will come back to the holiday. After that, we will promote a new promotion. So I think it's 1 or 2 weeks before then we know what will be the new promotions. And yeah, we have some promotions, but these are price promotions already in the price, in the selling price. So this promotion, free batteries, free optimizer, is ended in the December 31. Yeah, that's
okay.
It.
Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you.
I cannot say it to the camera. Honestly, my option is that each of the brands have its own case where you can use it. So yeah, I have to keep it like that. But after discussion, you can ask me. So Solax EV charger is it's really easy to install and to use. Basically, you have to wire the AC to it because it's charging from AC. But you just have to use an Ethernet cable between the charger and the inverter. And then you can have all the smart functions with it. So if you have excess electricity that you would sell to the grid, you can set the inverter to charge the batteries only when you have excess PV, or only to use PV to charge the car and not to use the grid. So it's really, I think it's the most easiest of all because there is no extra metering needed. If you already have a hybrid system with the built-in CTs connected, there is no extra measurement needed for the EV charger because it can use the metering from the inverter. So yeah, it's an EC charger, but it can charge with a 22 kilowatt maximum on 3-phase, and also you can reduce it to a smaller amount if it's needed. And yeah, that's all. So it's either can be, there's a 1-phase version from it and also 3-phase, depends on the car that you would like to charge and depends on the grid that you have at home. So thanks a lot for coming. I know it's been a long day and still gonna be a long day for you to drive back home. We really appreciate that you are here. So yeah, if you have any questions in the future, just feel free to reach out to us. And hopefully we will have another B2B day soon that we see each other. So thanks for coming and have a great weekend, guys. Thank you so much.